Breaking tonight, President Trump declares a national emergency at the southern border, while liberal activists plan nationwide protests for Monday. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro, and thanks for being with us tonight. And thanks to all of you for once again making justice #1 last weekend. We have a big show on deck with Freedom Caucus Chairman Congressman Mark Meadows, Dan Bongino, Dennis Prager, Dr. Kanta Ahmed, and Charlie Kirk. But first, my open. I've told you before, being a leader means making tough and many times unpopular decisions. This week, we watched a leader declare a national emergency where one was unequivocally and undoubtedly needed. It was vintage Donald Trump. And the reaction? Vintage fake news left. Within a 36 we watched the president sign a bill to keep the government open, declare a national emergency because of the security and humanitarian crisis at our southern border. We watched an attorney general be sworn in and watched the former deputy chief of the FBI blow himself, the Department of Justice, and the FBI up. We watched the economy reaching new heights, the left ignoring the blackface debacle because Democrats, from the Virginia governor to the AG to Joy Behar, were all involved. But what are we talking about today? Is there really an emergency at the border? The left is calling it a political stunt and a total waste of money. Some even threatening to take the barrier down if built.
Would you, if you could, would you take the wall down now? Here.
Yes.
Like you have a wall.
Absolutely.
Knock it down.
I'd take the wall down.
And do you think?
But make no mistake, Donald Trump will secure our border. The left are lying to you when they say there is no crisis, that the president is concocting the nation's immigration emergency. They object to the president's characterization of the influx as an invasion when they say the effort to protect us is a waste of money and that the president is simply engaging in a political stunt. A primer. Our southern border is overwhelmed by illegal immigration, gang violence, crime, drugs, and human trafficking. In fiscal year 2019, the DHS has already seen a 136% increase in the number of family units and unaccompanied children each month. 40,720 inadmissibles have entered our southwest border in the last 4 months. Thousands of violent criminals cross that border, endangering Americans. In the last 2 years alone, ICE has arrested 266,000 aliens with criminal records, including those convicted of 4,000 homicides, 30,000 sex crimes, and 100,000 assaults. And if you don't believe those numbers, just look at the jails in Texas. 186 illegal aliens and 276,000 criminal aliens were booked in local jails between 2011 and 2018. Last year, ICE removed more than 10,000 gang members already in our country illegally. Drugs are flowing across the border, devastating American families. Every week, 300 Americans die of heroin overdoses, of which 90% comes over that southern border. In 2019, ICE made over 1,500 human trafficking arrests, almost all of which were for sex trafficking. 20,000 children were illegally smuggled into the United States during the month of December alone. If this isn't a crisis at a border, it's hard to know what is. Emergency is just the recognition of what other politicians have blatantly lied about to the American people so that they could fill their coffers with willing and many times illegal Democrat voters, since they have lost the heart of most Americans. So what happens to these people? When captured, they claim asylum, which of course they could have claimed at a legal port of entry. But even then, They're released and given a court date. They don't even bother, most of them, to return, and 80% of them are not really eligible for asylum anyway, and their claims are ultimately rejected by immigration judges. But they don't care. They're off somewhere in America, maybe in your town, maybe even having a baby, which gives them free access to just about everything. Now, the president did everything he possibly could before declaring the state of emergency. And if you want to criticize anyone, criticize Congress, who dilly-dallied since 1986 when President Reagan declared the last amnesty. They are so jealous of the other party, as well as this outsider president, that they refuse to give him a win when their concern should be about giving the American people a win. They refuse to even consider that every day they refuse to negotiate or work on our behalf, 130 Americans died from opioid overdoses, and 90% of the heroin comes across that border. The left, however, instead of recognizing the danger to Americans, is determined to do nothing but criticize President Trump.
I think all of us will come to regret this. It is not the right way for the president to try and end run Congress.
If it was an emergency every time a president of the United States couldn't get what they wanted from Congress, we would be in a constant state of emergency.
I think the only national emergency is the humanitarian crisis that President Trump has created at our border by separating families from children and treating people who need our help inhumanely. I think this is manufactured.
But in the end, the president is right.
We will have a national emergency, and we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there. And we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court.
I can't imagine that the Supreme Court would not support the declaration of an emergency, given Congress's repeated failure to act, the president's repeated attempt to make the Democrats act. All these presidents have declared national emergencies. Now listen up. I've got news for you doubting Thomases. This president is on firm legal ground. Both the Constitution and Congress have given him the right to declare emergencies as an executive action. Youngstown versus Ohio, 343 U.S. 579. According to Justice Jackson, the president is at his zenith of power here, where Congress has delegated to him the authority, and his own authority is at its maximum. He possesses his own right, plus all that Congress has delegated. In these circumstances, and in these only, may he be said to personify a federal sovereignty. It's real simple, folks. What do you want? Should America be a nation state? Should we be a country defined by borders? Or should we simply be a repository for anyone who wants to come here? Should we be a refuge for the rest of the world to come for education, health care, housing, food stamps, and yes, even Social Security? And should they get a license, a free college education, while American kids have to pay for theirs? And of course, should they get the right to vote? Where do you stand? Let me know what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and at Judge Jeanine. Now, a few weeks ago, I spoke with President Trump right here on Justice about the issue of his declaring a national emergency. Take a listen to what he said then. For the last time, given that they don't seem to want to come to the table, that you have done all the negotiating, why not declare?
Well, that might happen, but I want to give them a chance to see if they can act responsibly.
Okay.
They should act responsibly. We're talking about the border, and I have to say, a lot of the people that aren't getting their checks are letting us know we don't care. You've got to solve the crisis at the border. It's a humanitarian crisis, and it's national security. It's very important.
He wanted to give them a chance to act responsibly, and we commend him for that. But now, here we are. Joining me now with reaction to my opening statement and all the news today, Chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Congressman Mark Meadows. Good evening, Congressman. Now,
it's good to be with you, Judge.
It's good to have you on again, Congressman. You know, there are so many people who are against this emergency declaration, and yet it seems that, you know, the United States Supreme Court and the precedent is there, the delegation is there from Congress, and he's got his own powers, and yet there are so many people who say that this is a mistake, some even Republicans. Why is that?
Well, I think everybody, especially on the Republican side of the aisle, wants to make sure that Congress has the power and not the executive branch. That being said, Judge, here's the interesting thing is Congress had the ability to act and actually stop the president from doing this national emergency. Yeah. 20 words, Judge. All they had to do is say no funds from 10 U.S.C. 284-2808 shall be used to build a barrier between Mexico and the United States. 20 words, if they had put in there, basically would have prohibited the president from doing this. But the president did a real shrewd thing. Before they signed the bill and sent it to him, before they voted on it, he said, I'm going to declare a national emergency. He put them on notice, and yet Congress didn't act. I think the Supreme Court will look at that and say, why did Congress not act? And you know why they didn't act? Because it's dysfunctional, and they refuse to admit that there's a crisis at the border.
And you know what's so amazing is as we go through these facts and you realize that they made an arrest and they brought in fentanyl, which could have taken down an American city or more. All you have to do is inhale the stuff. And the left doesn't seem to be concerned. They don't care. You know, they're supposed to be so into women's rights. They don't care about sex trafficking. They're not concerned about 20,000 kids being brought across the border, parents giving their kids, you know, drugs so they don't get pregnant, so just to get them across the border. I mean, here in America, we put parents in jail if they leave their kid in a car. They're sending them with these coyotes. It's a totally different scenario that we've got because why?
Well, I mean, here's the thing is so many on the left have ignored what has been happening over and over and again. You mentioned the human trafficking and the drugs. It's coming to our hometowns and our communities. But even more importantly than that, this president looked in the face of angel moms and dads, and he says, I'm going to deal with it. It wasn't just a campaign promise. It was a personal promise to so many families that have lost loved ones because of the open border. So he took a bold step, and some are criticizing him. I am not. Listen, we've had our chance. We should have put it in before him, and we didn't. And yet we couldn't even come up with a compromise, a reasonable compromise of $2.5 to $3 billion to get started. So the president did the right thing here.
What about, let's talk about the pots of money from which he's going to start building this, the border. Steel slats. I mean, the wall is out of the question, it seems. There are different pots of money, and I know from being a DA that seized assets, asset forfeitures, assets from drug. I mean, that stuff's easy. I mean, you've got drugs coming into 90% of the heroin. You can use that money, no problem. Are there many pots of money that he can seek to use that are there any pots that are going to be a problem for him going forward?
Well, I don't think from an executive branch standpoint that he's going to have many problems because those are unobligated funds. They're appropriated funds. Congress appropriated them, gave the executive branch flexibility. Certainly the two statutes that I referred to earlier give him the ability to reprogram them without congressional approval. He has to notify Congress, but he doesn't have to get their approval. Right. And when we look at this, Judge, here's the other aspect of what we are looking at. The president has been working with OMB for many, many weeks in anticipation that Congress would not really fully fund this because he believes it's a national emergency. The Border Patrol chiefs believe it's a national emergency. And they said we need $5.7 billion for these three top priorities. And yet Congress failed to deliver on that. And so there's some money from the military construction accounts. There's some over in Treasury as well. You mentioned the asset forfeiture. All of that can come together, hopefully end up around $8 billion that he can spend on border barriers.
Good for him. And you know, Obama misused money that wasn't appropriated to pay for Obamacare subsidies, but
yeah,
he did it quietly.
Remember. Right. We might remember $1.8 billion that went to Iran.
Yeah.
And I know I was in Congress. I didn't appropriate that. So, you know, let's make sure that we have the same standard for both.
It is shocking how the left looks at this president. It really is a shame. But when the safety and security of Americans is involved, it's an outrage. Anyway, Congressman Mark Meadows, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you.
All right. Coming up, socialists running Amazon out of New York, killing 25,000 jobs. Will it happen in a city near you? Syndicated radio show talk host Dennis Prager weighs in. But first, the left targeting Trump's national emergency declaration. My next guest says Trump owned the Dems in this border wall fight. Dan Bongino's live next. Don't go away.
What do you say to your critics who say that you are creating a national emergency, that you're concocting a national emergency here in order to get your wall because you couldn't get it through other ways?
Moms, what do you think? Do you think I'm creating something? Ask these incredible women who lost their daughters and their sons. Okay? Because your question is a very political question because you have an agenda. You're CNN. You're fake news.
That's President Trump fighting back to the accusation that there is not an emergency at the border. Joining me now with reaction host of the Dan Bongino Show podcast, Fox News contributor Dan Bongino. I got to tell you, Dan, he was vintage Donald Trump. I mean, the man, he should have been, you know what? He should have been a boxer. I mean, he would have had everyone on the ropes. It was just vintage. When he said, you know, in answer to this, that's all a fake, it's made up. Look at those women. I mean, he could have tried cases. He was unbelievable. What do you say to that move?
You know, Judge, with Acosta, it's like he keeps coming back. It's like, I saw a shirt once. I was in Six Flags, and it said, you know, the beatings will continue until morale improves, right? Like, when is Acosta going to get the hint? Dude, you keep getting destroyed by the president. Number one, your job, Jim, is to report the news, not be the news. But he keeps inserting himself into the story, Judge, and he keeps getting wrecked by Donald Trump, and he's made a fool of him. But on a serious note, I met both of them. I was actually in D.C. Yeah. I ran into Acosta, said hello, and I ran into the Angel Moms. Yep. When they have their shirts on with the pictures of their dead children,
I've
Judge,
seen it, yeah.
Are you sure you want to be the news guy getting up in front of them,
they don't care.
telling them that's not an emergency as their kid never takes another breath again?
They have no sense of empathy for these women or the fathers.
Nope. I totally agree. Zero.
All right. So he declares a national emergency. Everybody's now concerned about whether or not, and I put the president's sound on. It's going to go to a Ninth Circuit after it starts in a lower court, Ninth Circuit, and then the Supreme Court. But you have an interesting take on the pots of money that he's going to build the slats with. What do you say?
Yes. He totally outmaneuvered him. Listen, it was not a great bill overall. President Trump already acknowledged that. It's no secret. There are things in there we don't like. But, Judge, I'm telling you, on the funding issue, he completely wrecked the Democrats on this. The sequence of the spending matters. Follow me, folks. This is not really that hard, right? He gets $600 million from the Treasury Forfeiture Fund. Judge, no legal dispute whatsoever.
None.
Congressman Meadows just said that.
He gets to use
None.
it.
$2.5 billion from the Milcon budget, the military construction budget, no legal dispute at all.
Right.
It's by the time he gets to the emergency declaration money, that could be a year and a half, 2 years away. The wall is already being built by money already allocated. He's almost at his $5 billion already. But nobody's talking about this because the media doesn't want to acknowledge that Trump won this round. Again, he got his money. It's as simple as that.
That's a great point.
He did outsmart them.
That is a great point. Now, you know,
the sequence, Judge, of the spending matters.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about Andrew McCabe and what happened. I think we have some sound on McCabe as it relates. Do we have any sound on him? Yeah, let's put it up. Take a listen to this, Dan.
A discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort.
All right. So it seems, Dan, that he says that Justice Department officials had discussions about pushing Trump out. Now, this Rod Rosenstein, who I've been frustrated with since day one, he gets to leave quietly. You know, I don't know what the deal is there, or who he's got the goods on, and it doesn't make me very happy. But what's going on with McCabe? He's blowing up the FBI, the Department of Justice, and implicating himself. Do you believe it or not?
Well, keep in mind, Judge, Andy McCabe's in a world of trouble right now, and that's why he's even backtracking on this 25th Amendment conversation. He is one of the few players in this who has admitted on the record, that this whole case would not have existed without the dossier. Think about that. Everyone else has kind of fudged the numbers a little bit. Well, we had this.
50,
Remember
50.
Jim Comey? It was a cornucopia of information, or whatever word he used. McCabe has already admitted the spying on Trump would not have happened without the fake Hillary paid for information. McCabe knows that. Now, this knucklehead goes on 60 Minutes and admits to taking part in a coup. And now do you see why this knucklehead's backtracking? I mean, he admitted he took part in a government coup. The 25th Amendment, Judge, you do not have to be a lawyer, although I love your legal degree. To understand the 25th Amendment had no application here whatsoever. The 25th Amendment does not contain the words Federal Bureau of Investigation. Well, it has nothing to do with political disagreements.
But you know, I'm curious. Look, he's been referred to the Department of Justice. It was a criminal referral. I don't know if he's looking for immunity. He's looking to jackpot everybody else. But there's something going on. And by his pushing back now, I mean, we know the guy's a liar. I mean, he had a chance to take back what he lied about when he was in the FBI. He wouldn't even take it back. But I don't know what it means. I can't quite figure it out. But there's something wrong there with Rod Rosenstein and the rest of them. But I don't know. Do you agree? Otherwise, we got to go. Tell me what you think fast.
Judge, they both have the good. Listen, you work these cases as a prosecutor. What do you do when you get two bad guys involved in the same crime? You put them in separate rooms and you tell one guy the other guy ratted on him.
You beat them down.
So you get them both to rush to give up the goods quicker. This is what McCabe and Rosenstein are doing.
Love you, Dan. Take care. Thanks. And coming up, new late-breaking details on the Jussie Smollett attack investigation. Plus, what would your city look like if the socialists had their way? Nationally syndicated radio show host Dennis Prager joins me next to shed some light on this frightening topic. Justice, back in a moment.
Live from America's News Headquarters, I'm Robert Gray. New details on the deadly workplace shooting yesterday in Aurora, Illinois. Police say the shooter, Gary Martin, had a violent criminal past that should have prevented him from owning a gun. Martin was arrested 6 times in Illinois, as well as a felony aggravated assault in Mississippi back in 1995. He killed 5 people after finding out he was fired. Martin was then killed in a firefight with police. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert has withdrawn her nomination to become the Trump administration's next ambassador to the United Nations. In a statement released by the State Department, Nauert says the decision was made in the best interest of her family. The State Department says President Trump will soon announce a new nominee. I'm Robert Gray. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
Breaking tonight, new late details emerging in the Jussie Smollett attack investigation. Here with the latest, Mike Tobin.
Hi, Judge. One thing that has developed as his story seems to come unraveled all the time is that the official Chicago police spokesman, who has insisted throughout this process that Jussie Smollett was still the victim in the case, well, he is no longer considered the victim, not yet classified a suspect. There were two Nigerian brothers who were identified as these persons of interest off of the grainy security video in the area at the time the alleged attack took place. They were brought in for questioning. They were released, and that's because, as I got it from the official spokesman, they are now cooperating with police, and that played a role in their release. A lot of what I have to talk about beyond this goes back to our sister station, WFLD, citing anonymous sources saying that the rope that was allegedly put around Jussie Smollett's neck, that they have a receipt for that showing these Nigerian brothers bought it, they say, at the direction of Smollett, that he paid for their involvement in the alleged attack. Again, citing anonymous sources. It all goes back to January 29th, a date in which Smollett alleges that he was attacked in the Streeterville part of town by a couple of white individuals who hit him with homophobic and racist slurs and told him this is MAGA country. The story has continued to come unraveled, and police say what they want now is to bring Smollett in for some more questioning, additional questioning. They've contacted his legal representative, and they're going to take it from there. Judge?
Thanks, Mike Tobin. Thanks so much. And stay with Fox for more updates on this. And now another developing story. This week, we saw a small and frightening glimpse of what your city and ultimately America could and will look like if socialists continue to have their way. Thursday, Amazon pulled out of its planned headquarters in New York City after facing a fierce backlash from liberal lawmakers, progressive activists, socialists, and union leaders. A move that will now cost the city and its residents thousands of jobs, reflecting how socialists attacked our capitalist values and won. Even the liberal New York Times admitted in their opinion piece what a loss it is for the city of New York. One of the leaders of this movement, none other than freshman Democrat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, tweeted this in celebration of Amazon pulling out of the deal. Quote, anything is possible. Today was the day a group of dedicated everyday New Yorkers and their neighbors defeated Amazon's corporate greed, its worker exploitation, and the power of the richest man in the world, close quote. Here now with reaction to this and so much more, nationally syndicated radio show host Dennis Prager, whose Prager University website had more than 1 billion with a B views last year, and his latest book, Rational Bible, is the best-selling Bible commentary in America today. Dennis, we are thrilled to have you on Justice. Thanks for being with us.
Judge, it is a total delight to be with you. You're very special. I don't say that to my host as a general rule, so please know how sincere I am.
Thank you very much.
There is so much to be said here. You're welcome. You deserve it. You've earned it. By the way, earn is a conservative word. Conservatives love the word earn, like earn self-esteem, not be given self-esteem, but okay. All right, moving on. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a good example of the left since Marx. This is not new. They're not liberals, they're leftists. And for the left, the love of ideas is much greater than the love of people. That 25,000 people would have jobs, good paying jobs, that massive numbers of workers in Long Island City and environs would benefit from Amazon coming there is of no consequence to them. They care about corporate greed, not about bettering the life of human beings. In the name of equality, people don't realize how much evil has been done. This is a little example. The French Revolution, where it began, hey, equality, and then they had guillotines. Oh, equality, and then you have Venezuela. Oh, equality, Communist China. Oh, equality, Soviet Union. Equality, in the way the left means it, has caused more evil in the last 100 years than any other value.
You know, the amazing part of it is that Cortez, in particular, doesn't seem to understand the fundamental fundamentals of taxation. She thinks that there is a $3 billion pot of money that we should just be giving to other companies or to New Yorkers. What she doesn't get is that if there are 25,000 jobs, over $100,000 for we're not talking about minimum wage, although minimum wage would be great too. So you've got $2.5 billion that generates a tax revenue, and then you've got $3 billion that they are providing in an incentive, but every year, and then all the additional, the restaurants, the bodegas, the shop owners, the transportation, the Ubers, the infrastructure, the building, the construction. I mean, this is idiocy like I've never seen before. If there were a benefit to someone, I'd say, okay, we have a difference of opinion, but this is pure stupidity.
Well, that's my point. Leftism is an emotion. It is not a position. And so they so loathe that anybody is richer than anyone else that it is better that everyone suffer at a low level than everyone be improved, but there still be much richer people. They live the idea of the violation, since I think in biblical terms often, of the 10th commandment. Do not covet what belongs to someone else. The left is based on coveting. They loathe the idea that Bezos is rich. I can't stand Bezos, but I don't loathe the idea that he's a billionaire. It is irrelevant to me. The only question is, will he do good by bringing business to my city? The answer is an unequivocal yes.
And, you know, an 8 million square foot headquarters. And then finally, this can happen everywhere in the United States. This isn't just about New York. This is socialism as the issue.
Yes, socialism is this love of equality. And it, as I said, so much evil has been done in it. Everybody is equal. By the way, this is not just in economics. For the left, everything is flattened out to equality. Parent-child are equal. Wow. The left-wing mindset does not want the parent to be unequal to their child, the teacher to be unequal to their student. Everything is equal. And of course, we are gods. We are equal. We are gods in our own eyes. Marx said it, and Engels said it. This is the beginning of leftism. I am my God. I don't answer to something higher than me. A child doesn't answer to a parent. A student doesn't answer to a teacher. A human doesn't answer to God. Whoa. It is a flattening out in the name of equality.
Sad times. Dennis Prager, thanks so much for being with us tonight. We look forward to having you on again. And up next, a freshman congresswoman under fire over a series of tweets widely perceived as anti-Semitic. Dr. Kanta Ahmed's here next to discuss. Outrage continues tonight after Congresswoman Ilhan Omar sparked backlash this week for what was perceived as anti-Israel comments. Joining me now with a reaction, Dr. Kanta Ahmed, member of the Council of Foreign Relations and author of In the Land of Invisible Women. Good evening, Dr. Ahmed. Now, you wrote an op-ed piece in the Daily Caller suggesting that Congresswoman Omar was an anti-Semite. Why?
The views that she's expressed, to me, as a naturalized American Muslim myself, are ringing completely true with Islamist anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitism, the vilification, the demonization, the hatred for Jews. It's a universal value to repudiate that. And she is endorsing traditional racist anti-Semitism.
But the amazing part is she's a freshman congresswoman, and I believe she came to the United States as a refugee, and now she's in our Congress claiming that the Jewish state, that Israel and Jews are what? Evil?
She made some clumsy remarks about a Jewish organization, AIPAC.
Right.
But 5 years ago, she made quite an allegation about the sorcery of Jews over the United States. There are many other remarks we needn't repeat. But she is sharing the view of Islamism, which demonizes Jews, Israel, Judaism as a central cosmic enemy. To me, it seems she's unfit for her role in Congress, but certainly needs to be ejected from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where she may be influencing U.S. policy into an anti-Israeli position.
Have you heard that anyone is going to move to remove her from foreign?
No, and I think this presents a dilemma for the left. Speaker Pelosi, just like American Muslims have a liability in this woman, they have a liability in this Congresswoman. She is showing the marriage of left-wing politics in the Democrats with Islamism. Bernie Sanders congratulated her. Instead, he stands with his Muslim brothers and sisters. To me, he stands with Islamists, and they do not distinguish between the two. It's very problematic. The Islamism only succeeds by portraying itself as a victim, and left-wing politics thrives on victimization, victim ideology. She's no victim, as you said. She came as an asylum seeker. She's moved to one of the highest offices in the land within 23 years. What other country gives a refugee that opportunity?
She is an empowered Muslim woman, while many Muslim women aren't allowed to be educated, and they just started driving.
But as a member of the Shoah Foundation, I do want to say Jewish friends and colleagues of mine are horrified and feel betrayed by the Democratic Party, that they do not repudiate anti-Semitism on the left. Somehow they can only see it on the right, but they're blind to their own. The other freshman Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, received a telephone call from Jeremy Corbyn, who is openly anti-Semitic, who's laid wreaths at the tomb of Hamas commanders, and could be poised to become the British Prime Minister. Do we want that here? We must, the Democrats, if I was a Democratic strategist, we must address this encroachment of being in bed with Islamism and empowering anti-Semitism, which is against every American value.
And it's against our Judeo-Christian ethics.
And it is also profoundly against Islam, which reveres the Torah and Judaism.
And you and I understand when you say Islamist, I mean, we're not, you know, there is a political ideology versus the Muslim religion.
Exactly.
Good to see you, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. And new reaction to Trump's emergency declaration at the border. Turning Point USA Charlie Kirk is here to talk about that and more next. President Trump declaring a national emergency at the southern border. Here with reaction, founder, executive director of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. All right, good evening, Charlie. Now, everybody's upset on the left with the idea of the president actually trying to make the country more secure. And they say that this wall is immoral and they're going to stop it at every turn, in the courts and everywhere else they can. And one guy, Beto, whatever his name is going to tear it down. What say you?
Yeah, well, I call him by his birth name, Robert Francis O'Rourke, because he's not actually Hispanic at all. But look, here's how absurd the left has become: is now they want to tear down all our walls. Yeah. But look, the president was elected on the promise of getting this wall built. He went through Congress, is keeping the government open. He's got some money for the wall, but it seems, Judge, that this has been a 30 or 40-year struggle to get both parties, or even one party, to fight to secure our border. And if this is not an emergency in our country, what is an emergency? As you said in your open, which was brilliant, President Obama declared 13 declarations of emergencies. Talk about the opioid crisis, the drugs in our country, the illegal guns. This is an emergency. The president is using his constitutional authority put forth in the National Emergency Act that was passed in the 1970s to be able to address problems such as the porous southern border, and he should be applauded for doing so courageously.
Well, and the amazing part of it is that, you know, when people realize a number of Americans are being killed by opioids, heroin, fentanyl, it's like the left doesn't care. They just want to fill their coffers with Democrat voters. Legal or illegal doesn't matter. And that's what this is all about. I've come to that conclusion. But let's talk about Ocasio-Cortez and the socialism that we see with Amazon basically being forced out of New York because one of her pals there, and amazingly, the governor, Cuomo, and Mayor de Blasio are not really criticizing her. You know, it's like they're talking out of both sides of their mouths.
Yeah, and look, Judge, it's amazing how much power this freshman congresswoman from New York has. And look, I make fun of socialism all the time. You do too, and we should make fun of it. But this is really serious stuff because 25,000 middle-class workers are not going to have work in New York because of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She cares more about herself than the constituents and the hardworking people of New York City. And look, I'm no big fan of Amazon, okay? I think they do a lot of deals that are not right. I think they should pay more in taxes. I think they use loopholes. But I personally would love to see Amazon employ 25,000 hardworking New Yorkers.
But it's not just 25,000. Think of all of the other, the restaurant, the transportation, the infrastructure, the building, the car washes, whatever you want to say, the car. It's unimaginable what it would do to Long Island City. And she doesn't understand. She doesn't get it. She just thinks we have $3 billion and we ought to just give it away. She doesn't get that $3 billion is money generated by the money that Amazon is paying that will go into the tax revenues. She doesn't get it.
Exactly right. Yeah, and this will be their corporate headquarters, not to mention each one of those people that be working at Amazon, they will get raises, they'll be able to buy houses, get bigger apartments, the billions of dollars in investment that'd be happening in her community. But this is so important with what's happening at the far left. They would rather prove a point and try to destroy wealth creation and take credit for it than actually see people's lives get better.
All right.
This is a challenge. Can you think of a Democrat that has done more damage to their community in the last couple months than AOC with this deal?
So, that's right. We'll see what happens. Charlie Kirk, thanks so much. We'll be right back.
You bet, Judge. Thank you.
Finally, tonight, if you want more justice, head over to Fox Nation, where you'll find my reaction to news of the week and exclusive specials. It's live now. Go to foxnation.com and keep up with me throughout the week on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. I'm Jeanine Pirro, advocating for truth, justice, and the American way. The Greg Gutfeld Show is coming up next.